Hi, today I will show you how to prepare a western blot. For the experiment, we will need a bottle of methanol, a liter of TBST, 500 ml of transfer buffer, 250 of blocking buffer, and the container with the diluted antibodies on blocking buffer. The first step is to activate the PVDF membrane by soaking it in methanol for 15 minutes. Make sure the membrane is completely submerged and set on the rocker. Always sterilize your tweezers before touching the membrane. Set up the SDS page while keeping track of where you load each sample. Run at 200 volts, 400 milliamps for 45 minutes. Protocol may change depending on the size of the sample. Once the SDS page is running, you will take your membrane and place it on a separate container alongside one filter paper. Dispose of the methanol in a waste container. You will have a second container with 2 more filter papers, in which you will add transfer buffer. Take your 2 containers and have them on the rocker until the SDS page has finished its run. After the SDS page has finished its run, take the gel and rinse it with water. Keep track of which side has your samples. Once the gel has been separated from the glass plate, you'll want to take the spatula and cut a corner. This corner will serve as a reference that will let you know how you loaded the samples. It is also important that you cut the top of the gel where the wells are located. Now that the gel has been cut, you can start setting up your western blot sandwich on the western blot apparatus. Start off by placing one filter paper on the machine. And use transfer buffer to dampen that filter paper. You'll want to remove the bubbles every time you place a filter paper and dampen it with transfer buffer. Use the 15 ml conical tube to do so. Once you rolled up the bubbles, the next step is to place your membrane over the filter paper. Your membrane should be larger than the filter paper itself. Once that is ready, the next step is to transfer the gel on top of the membrane. A tip I recommend is to add some buffer onto the gel to make sure the gel is wet. This will make it easier for you to hold on to it. It's important you can grab it very well, since you will only have one chance to do this. Once the gel touches the membrane, that is where the proteins will stick. Make sure you make it inside the membrane. I start off by placing it at the bottom of the membrane and laying it down. Once that gel has been placed, you cannot go back. That gel must not move. Finish it off by placing 2 more filter papers on top of it and rolling out the bubbles. The top of your sandwich should look similar to this, with 2 filter papers over your gel. Once again, add the transfer buffer to the top of the membrane, making sure it's soaked in it. And using the 15 ml conical tube, roll out those bubbles. Once this is done, you will dry out excess buffer surrounding and you are ready to close down your apparatus. Once the apparatus has been closed, you will connect it to this machine to run it. Running will be 25 volts. It is important that you do not exceed 25 volts or the machine could get damaged. The machine will run for 2 hours. Once the run has finished, carefully open the apparatus. The sandwich might stick to the bottom off the metal plate. What you will want to do is take the pipette you had been using to poke under and make sure it drops. Once it drops, take off the cover and you can remove the top filter papers and discard them. You will use your tweezers and scissors, both which have been sterilized, to cut the membrane to size. You'll want to cut the membrane as close to the gel as possible. Pick up your membrane using the tweezers and drop the gel to stain and destain. Separate your membrane into a different container. Once the membrane has been cut to size, you will use TBST to rinse out the membrane 3 times. After rinsing the membrane, you will use the blocking solution and add it to the membrane, completely covering and letting it rock for 30 minutes. Once the 30 minutes have passed, you will take the container and dump out the blocking buffer into the waste. You will take the antibodies diluted in blocking buffer and add them to the membrane. Make sure the membrane is completely submerged, otherwise the antibodies will not bind. Place on the 4-degree refrigerator and let rock overnight. When you come back the next day, you will collect the antibody solution It is extremely important that you do not discard this solution, as the antibodies can be reused for future experiments. To get rid of any excessive blocking buffer still on the membrane, we will rinse 5 times for 5 minutes with TBST. Place on the rocker for 5 minutes. Once the 5 minutes are up, take your membrane, dump into the waste, and repeat the process until you've done it 5 times.